You don't need a loud multi-thousand-dollar server rack to run a professional home lab. In fact, this entire high availability cluster is running on 3 cheap Dell Optiplex 9020 nodes that I picked up for less than the cost of a modern graphics card. Today, I'm going to take you inside my minimalist 3-node Proxmox setup to show you exactly how I architect things, what containers I run, and how you can build a resilient infrastructure on a budget. Let's take a look at the setup. So here's what my home lab looks like. I have 3 Dell Optiplex 9020 machines that I bought in June of 2025. They all came with 16 gigs of RAM, and they all had the same i7 4770 processor. Now, it's a bit of an old processor. It came out in 2013, but for my needs, it works just fine. Altogether, I paid less than $250 to have these all shipped to my house. Once the hardware was on my desk, the real challenge was trying to get all 3 nodes to work together in a true, highly available cluster. I knew from the beginning that I didn't want to just have everything on my home network. I wanted to separate out the VM traffic, and I wanted to separate out the storage. So for that, I bought a simple 8-port TP-Link smart switch. And I'll throw a link down here in the description for anybody who wants to buy this exact one. It works pretty well. To make this easy, I set up 2 custom VLANs for my home lab. I kept VLAN 1 as the default traffic. That's anything that normally lives on my house, my normal home network. For my home lab, I set up VLAN 100, which would contain all the VM traffic, and VLAN 200, which would contain all the Ceph traffic, or the shared storage. That VLAN 200 is really important, by the way. If you do go with a 3-node cluster and you do use Ceph, you want to separate out that traffic. Ceph is very chatty. And before I set this up, I actually found that my home internet was slowing down and devices were having trouble connecting to the internet because my entire network was taken up with Ceph traffic being extremely chatty between all 3 of the nodes. Once I had my VLANs configured, I went back into Proxmox and I went to the nodes and I created the networks for them. As you can see, all my nodes have their management address on my home network. I have a bridge network for all the VM traffic, and I have a bridge network for all the Ceph traffic. And when I set up Ceph, I made sure that I picked this 200 VLAN. At the end of the day, I didn't build this cluster just to say I have a cluster. For me, this lab is a massive playground for learning and building things. I do a lot of hobby development, and having 3 dedicated physical nodes means I can break things, test out random code, and spin up new environments without worrying about messing up my main computer. If a database container gets corrupted or a script goes sideways, I just wipe the LXC container and start over in about 5 seconds. It's way better than paying for AWS or cloud hosting just to test a side project. It gives me a safe, local space to learn how things actually work under the hood without any real consequences when things break, which, let's be honest, happens a lot. When I first got my home lab hooked up, my default instinct was to spin up a bunch of dedicated Linux virtual machines for every single tool or service that I wanted. Part of that is just budget logic. Linux is free, and I didn't want to waste money on a corporate Windows license just to test some tools. As you can see, I still have some Linux virtual machines hanging around. But I quickly realized they take up a lot of resources. You can see my Docker server right here has 16 gigs of RAM dedicated to it, and currently it's using 11 of those. I also have LXC containers, which I started moving over to. And you can see a lot of these have way less resources dedicated to them. For example, I have Authentic, which I use for a lot of authentication to any of the tools and apps that I use. It has 2 virtual CPUs and it uses 2 gigs of RAM. That's perfect. If I wanted to build that on a full-fledged Linux server, I'd probably double those resources. I have web servers that have memory of 512 megabytes versus 1 gigabyte. They run on a single CPU, and you would never know because the website is incredibly fast. One of the benefits from switching over from a full-fledged server to an LXC is Proxmox provides templates for you to use. If I go to my template library and I click on the templates button, I can see all these templates that I could download and deploy in a matter of seconds. As an example, if I were to look at Ubuntu 26 and I hit download, we'll let Proxmox do its thing in the background, and I should get some kind of task OK at the end. And there we are. Now, if I want to create a new container that's running Ubuntu 26, I hit the Create CT button. I give it a name, test LXC. I give it a password. I confirm the password, and I hit next. And from here, I can select any of the templates that are in my library. So we'll start with this Ubuntu one, and we'll just kind of blow through all the options here, and we'll finish. And we'll see that in a matter of seconds, I should have a brand new LXC running in my Proxmox environment. And there we go. One of the best parts about using an LXC is the speed that you get from it. If we go to the console and I start the container, in real time, you'll see how quickly I go from pressing the start button to me being able to log in. And there we go. The speed of the Linux container is not the only benefit we get from it. Back on the summary tab, we can see at idle, this container is only using about 41 megabytes of memory and not even touching the processor that we gave it. A full build of an Ubuntu server would take up a lot more idle resources than this. Now, because I use this entire environment for hobby development and constant learning, I break things all the time. Messing up container configuration is just part of the process, but losing days of configuration files or database data isn't fun. So to make sure I stop myself from all that accidental headache, I installed Proxmox Backup Server. Instead of manually copying files or running janky backup scripts, Proxmox Backup Server ties directly into my cluster architecture. I have it configured to automatically grab snapshots of every single VM and container every night while I'm asleep, and if something goes completely sideways on node 1, I don't have to panic anymore. One important thing to note is that I do have a Synology NAS in the background that takes all the backup data and stores it for me. So once a backup's done, I could jump right back into the Proxmox console, pick any of my containers or VMs, go to the backup tab, and restore any of them from any of these backups that I have. And one of the best parts about Proxmox Backup Server is deduplication. It only saves the data that actually changed since the last backup. So rather than duplicating the entire operating system every night over and over again, it saves an insane amount of drive space and it runs quietly in the background. It gives me a lot of peace of mind to experiment with whatever I want on this hardware. So that's the quick tour of my minimalist 3-node cluster. It's not a massive corporate server rack, but for a hobby developer, it handles my automated nightly backups, isolates my network traffic, and it runs all my self-hosted apps, giving me a completely free sandbox to learn and break things every single day. If you're sitting on the fence about starting a home lab because you think you need to spend thousands of dollars on the best equipment and enterprise hardware, I say go check eBay for some old office desktops instead. You can build a hyper-resilient cluster for less than the cost of a modern graphics card. My cluster's been running for over a year without problems. In the coming weeks, I plan to do a few videos that really talk about my Proxmox home lab and how I leverage it to make videos for this channel. I hope I was able to help you learn something today. If you did, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video, a comment, or even subscribe to the channel. It really helps me get these videos in front of other people who could use this information. Thanks. I'm TechSimpld, and I'll see you in the next one.